For Oberleutnant Klaus Richter of the 352nd Artillery Regiment, the morning of June 6, 1944, began no differently from countless others along the Normandy coast. A thin, damp mist clung to the surface of the English Channel, softening the horizon and muffling the world in a dull gray silence. The air was bitterly cold, saturated with the familiar smells of salt, wet soil, and concrete. Just after 5 a.m., Richter stood his watch as he had so many times before, another morning defined by vigilance, tension, and waiting. Then the sea began to change. Through his binoculars, as the first pale light of dawn struggled to rise above the horizon, Richter noticed something unnatural forming where water met sky. It was not the tide, nor a shift in the weather. A dark, indistinct line had appeared, faint at first, then slowly sharpening, widening, and multiplying. Within moments, it became unmistakable. What emerged from the mist was not merely a fleet, but something far larger and more unsettling. A vast, floating metropolis of steel, advancing steadily toward the French coast. In that moment, before a single Allied soldier stepped onto the beaches below, before the names Omaha and Utah carried any meaning, Richter understood with chilling clarity that the Third Reich was about to be overwhelmed. To comprehend the shock of that dawn, one must step inside the mindset of Fortress Europe in the spring of 1944. From the icy coast of Norway to the Spanish frontier, German engineers had constructed what was heralded as the Atlantic Wall, an immense defensive system of concrete bunkers, steel obstacles, minefields, and heavy artillery. In official briefings and relentless propaganda, it was presented as an impenetrable barrier, physical proof of the Reich's power and permanence. Richter, however, harbored no such illusions. At 32, he was a seasoned professional soldier and a veteran of the Eastern Front. He was old enough to remember a Germany before total war, yet young enough to have been shaped by years of brutal combat. Pragmatic, observant, and deeply fatigued, he understood the difference between ideological certainty and battlefield reality. His command consisted of an artillery battery equipped with check-made guns housed in reinforced concrete casemates several miles inland from the beaches the Allies would soon designate as Omaha. From his observation post, a bunker embedded in a high bluff, he commanded a sweeping view of the channel. Day after day, he and his men drilled without pause. They recalculated firing solutions, maintained their guns, and stared across miles of empty gray water. Conversations always returned to the same subject: the invasion, tag X not if it would come, but when, and more importantly, where. German intelligence was confident the main Allied assault would strike the Pas-de-Calais, the shortest crossing point across the Channel. It was logical, predictable, and heavily defended by the bulk of Germany's Western forces. Normandy, by contrast, was considered secondary, perhaps the site of a diversionary landing. This assumption, carefully nurtured by the Allied deception effort known as Operation Fortitude, would prove to be a devastating miscalculation. Richter's own unit, the 352nd Infantry Division, was stronger than many formations in the region, yet it was a pale reflection of the elite forces that had swept through France 4 years earlier. It was a composite formation, battle-hardened veterans from the East mixed with teenage conscripts and aging reservists. They were disciplined and determined, but they were not shock troops. They were defenders tasked with holding a line stretched dangerously thin. The Atlantic Wall itself was less a continuous barrier than a patchwork. Many bunkers remained unfinished, minefields contained gaps, and the vast distances between strongpoints left dangerous vulnerabilities. Richter knew this well. He had observed farmers still using hidden paths, noted blind spots in overlapping fields of fire, and recognized how easily isolated positions could be bypassed. Against a determined and well-supported assault, he was skeptical of their chances. In the weeks leading up to June, tension became a constant presence. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, charged with strengthening coastal defenses, drove his troops relentlessly. Millions of mines were planted, and thousands of steel obstacles, mockingly referred to as Rommel's asparagus, were driven into the sand. Rommel understood a fundamental truth the High Command in Berlin seemed unwilling to accept. If the Allies were not defeated on the beaches within the first 24 hours, the war in the West would be lost. Allied air superiority would make large-scale reinforcement impossible. The first day alone would decide everything. Then, on June 5th, the weather deteriorated. High winds and rough seas swept across the channel. The German Meteorological Office confidently predicted that any invasion attempt would be impossible for several days. Senior officers relaxed. Rommel himself left France to return to Germany for his wife's birthday. The storm, it was believed, had bought them time. Thus, as Richter stood watch in the pre-dawn chill of June 6th, the atmosphere was routine, almost dull. The storm had passed, but the sea remained unsettled. No one expected action. He was scanning the eastern horizon when he noticed a flicker. Raising his Zeiss binoculars, Richter felt his heartbeat quicken. The flicker resolved into ships, not a patrol, not a raid. Hundreds of vessels followed by hundreds more. He swept his gaze left and right. Everywhere he looked, the same impossible sight greeted him. The sea was no longer water. It had become a continuous mass of dark steel. A deep, instinctive dread crept up his spine. This was not a problem that could be solved. It was a reality that defied comprehension. German intelligence estimates had suggested the Allies might assemble perhaps 3,000 vessels, an immense undertaking in itself. What Richter saw far exceeded that. He could distinguish the massive silhouettes of battleships and cruisers, encircled by fast-moving destroyers. Beyond them stretched an endless swarm of landing craft, packed so tightly they seemed to merge into a single mechanical entity. The official figure would later approach 7,000 vessels from 8 nations, the largest amphibious invasion force in history. To Richter, it was not a number. It was a physical presence so vast it appeared to bend the horizon. Germany had built a wall of concrete. The Allies had answered with a bridge of steel. Richter seized the field telephone, his palm slick with sweat. "This is Oberleutnant Richter, Observation Post 4. I have visual contact with the channel. There are ships." The reply was tired, dismissive. Reports mentioned minor naval activity, possibly a raid. "No," Richter insisted, his voice tightening. "You don't understand. There are thousands. The sea is completely covered. This is the invasion." Disbelief followed. Weather reports contradicted him. Frustration mounting, Richter slammed the receiver down and tried another line, this time reaching regimental headquarters. "The invasion fleet is here," he reported. 10,000 ships. He knew he was exaggerating, yet in that moment it felt like an understatement. As he waited for permission to fire, Richter realized the true enemy was not just the ships advancing toward him, but the failure of imagination gripping the German command. Plans, intelligence summaries, and assumptions were collapsing under the weight of undeniable reality. When the order finally came, the illusion was gone. The war Richter had known was over. A new one, industrial, overwhelming, and merciless, had arrived with the dawn. And he was watching it unfold, powerless to stop it, as history surged inexorably toward the shore.